see how much we got in common.
I see that already. All right, so we're gonna go with JB.
Okay.
JB.
Either Zuberi or JB, doesn't make a difference. What is comfortable for you?
Zuberi or JB. I'm sure I'll use both intermittently between the shows.
Either one doesn't make a difference.
But either way, thank you so much for coming out to the city on this very warm winter day. It's a beautiful day out there, man.
My pleasure.
So thank you for coming out here, spending time talking with me. And I'm never going to forget the first time that we just met randomly in a parking lot. I'm sitting there, you're riding your bicycle. We start having a conversation and everything just sort of flowed from there. And you've always been on my radar as somebody I wanted to bring on here to learn more about how you grew up, what you've been through, the things that you can really teach a lot of the young people out there that, let's just be honest, a lot of times younger people, we just don't see, or just a lot of them just don't care about what happened in the past or what other people went through. We're just so concerned about what's going on now.
Right.
And just to see, or just to hear that brief instances of what you went through back in the day really resonated with me. And I hope we have an opportunity to make sure that the people who listen to the show can also get the same vibe from you. But thank you again, Zubi. So before we begin and really get into it, why don't you just tell everybody about, who you are, where you came from, and what you're up to now.
Well, I came from Macomb, Mississippi. I was born in Macomb, Mississippi, went to Higgins High School. And after Higgins High School, then went to college at Mississippi Valley State. And there I met my wife. But just coming from Mississippi and going to college, in the South, where we they had a lot of things that were going on when we were growing up. They were going through the civil rights movement from 1960, when I was 63, when John Kennedy got shot.
Yeah.
There's a new era coming in. And then in 1964, there were a lot of civil rights workers that was coming through Macomb, Mississippi. And at that time, a lot of white kids were coming down from Macomb, Mississippi. And one of the guys named Jim Lewis, he came down and stayed with us. And there was a lot of bombings and everything was going on. But the thing about it is that they didn't understand. They thought about voting rights. But what happened is that there are a lot of these white kids that were living in the black community that we were responsible for, that were living with us. Mm-hmm. That was the only frightening time that I've ever had, because we didn't want the people outside of Macomb, Mississippi to look at seeing these bombings going on and these white kids get blown up in these black people's houses. And we had to protect them. We had to protect them and let them know that these people are here. And so I grew up with that. My mother worked in the civil rights movement from day one. Strong sister, one of the strongest people and the funniest people I've ever met. But one of the things I'm grateful for is that she didn't allow me to hate. Because we didn't grow up with hatred. We didn't know what it was. We know there were separate high schools, this side of the track, that side of the track. But there were no problems at the time, because we didn't understand that there were problems. But it had to take people from the outside to come in and say, there are two Americans here, one black and one white. Well, there was a train track that separated us. But what happened is that in 1964, there was a girl named Brenda Travis who had went down to the Greyhound bus station, and she was 16 years old, and they arrested her. And so there was a school meeting that day, and one guy named Joe Lewis got up. We wanted to ask the principal of that school, what happened to Brenda Travis and Ike? Well, we didn't find out what happened to them for a long time, but where I grew up was a very close-knit community. I mean, it was so close that you can go to the next person. If somebody was hungry, hey, go to that person. Now, my mother's house was the house that all the kids in the neighborhood came to and enjoyed. And we had the first TV, man. It was
the first TV.
First TV, man. Everybody in the projects. We lived in the projects. Everybody came by and see the TV.
What was life like in the projects over there? I mean, is it comparable to what if you were to go to the projects here now? Sort of the same thing, different vibe, worse?
No. The projects we live in, man, there was a so close-knit community.
Wow.
It was really close-knit. Everybody knew where all the kids were. If my kid was over there, we didn't have no telephone, but they knew they were at Miss Sarah's house or I'm at that kid's house. There were no fightings or no gangs or nothing like that. We had one idea in common. That was, man, how can we graduate from my first grade teacher, my Miss McLeod, my second grade teacher, Miss Perkins, Miss Johnson, third grade, Miss Hood, the fourth grade.
You remember all of them?
I remember all of them, man, because they were impacted. Miss Sturgeon was the sixth grade, and then we changed classes and everything. But we had one thing in common, because those historically black colleges, that's all you talked about, going to college. We had talk about no other job. We were talking about going to college to take our, not parents, we didn't know what, we had black community, we had black businesses, man. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff that was going on down there that we didn't have to go to the white community. We had it in our own neighborhood. We had Miss Eileen Quinn. It was really jumping in Macomb, Mississippi.
That's, I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's unbelievable to hear that growing up back then, that the community, what we would call the projects here, which, you know, people my age, or what we see over here, there's a certain stigma that comes with the word project.
Right.
What happens over there, or if you're not anywhere from near there, stay away from there. But the way that you guys grew up over there, it's no different than any suburban community here.
No,
everybody looks out for each other. You know the neighbors, and you're working together to say we need to go to college.
We need to go to college. A lot of kids couldn't afford it, and to this day, there are people that in Atlanta. I just got a call from a guy yesterday from Wisconsin, Wausau, Wisconsin. He hadn't seen me in years. And there's a cohesiveness there that all those people that grew up in the project, when I say we were a family, if my voice break up, I mean, we were a family. I mean, really a family, man. And then you didn't see any of that fighting and stuff. One thing I can tell you, everybody went to church. Yeah, there are drugs in the different projects right now around the country. I'm telling you right now, if there was anybody that was pushing any kind of drugs in the project where we were, you didn't have to call the police. You didn't have to call them at all, because number one, they would have been pointed out, and their parent would have been pointed out. You don't do that kind of stuff here. We just didn't do that, and that's why we were always encouraged to go to college, to do something. And we had a kid from Berkeley named Greg, came in 1964 to stay with us and stayed in the house with us. And here he was from Berkeley. What are you coming out here for? The most frightening time I had was when he had to sleep in the same bed with me. And at that time, I didn't know if he was FBI, KGB. I didn't know who he was. But I asked my mom, look, I'm scared to death. This white guy in this room here with us. What's going on? She said, son, this house is the house of God. Whoever comes in this house is welcome. And from that day on, I understood the foundation of what she was all about. And my stepfather, great man, all through the bombings and everything that they did, they fired him off his job because he thought he was associated with one of the ladies that was working in the civil rights movement. They fired him off his job. They're blowing up churches and all kinds of stuff. So even at that time right there, yes, it happened, but when we realized what was happening, I didn't understand the magnitude until now.
That's just, first of all, it's just so incredible how much the influence of parents were back then.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming everybody had a mom and a dad still involved with each other, correct?
Not really. There are a lot of families there that didn't have fathers. I'm one of the blessed ones to have. My mother was married twice. She was married twice. My real father, my mother's a very spiritual lady. Mm-hmm. She came from a family of 12. Grandfather was a bishop. So they were going to go to college whether they liked it or not. But my mom was just like him. And a lot of time there were, at that time, it wasn't that much for African-American men to do. You couldn't go play golf at the swimming pool. Either you go Friday night, get drunk, Saturday, and then Sunday you go to church and then go to work back, go to work on Monday to Friday. And so she was a strong lady. And a lot of time, I don't know this, to this day, I don't know what broke them up, my first father. But what happened is, I think she was stronger than he was in a lot of ways. And there were things that broke them apart. She was out there, she was smart. He was smart in his own way. but he wasn't where she was, and I think there were people who were kind of jealous of it because they were husband and wife, and so my first father split up. Then my second father, that man was the one that raised me. That's one of the reasons. I love both of my fathers. I love them both. He was the one that raised me, picked me up. I didn't know what stepson mean. I knew what my son mean. And to this day, with tears, I'm so grateful to that man to have raised me the way that he loved, and I wasn't his biological son. See, because I saw no different.
That's big of anybody to be able to take somebody under their wing and treat you like a son. It sounds like it should be more common sense, but it doesn't happen that much nowadays.
No, it does
People
not
are very
happen.
much about on what's in it for them, or you're not my real son, therefore I don't,
He never threw that up in my face or even said anything about it. I was his son. I got two brothers and a sister. Even before they were born, he took me everywhere with him.
Wow.
This is my son. Wow, man. I mean, I had tears in my eyes just thinking about him right now.
I believe it. I mean, reminiscing on that, I can only imagine. What was, I always wanted to ask you this too. What was life really like as a young kid growing up under Jim Crow era? Did you really see it? Did parents keep it away from you and you just knew that what life was like? To us, it seemed pretty good at the time.
Number one, I didn't know what Jim Crow era was. I knew blacks were over there, whites were over here. I knew we got books like 2 or 3 years behind the time. I know they didn't want us to go to the same swimming pool. I know they didn't want to. Our mom, they didn't tell us why. They didn't call it racism. They didn't call it Jim Crow, whatever. It's just something that you didn't do. We used to have the circuits to come to town on Fridays. Blacks would go to town, and on Saturdays, blacks not go to town. Then whites go to town, and so you didn't have the intermingling of the races. And it was definitely separate, but it was part of the norm. We didn't know. It was part of the norm. But those black people that were separated, they were working for the white people.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go over and work for them and then come back. And so that's what was tough. We didn't know what Jim Crow was. I didn't know what Jim Crow was until after I got out of college.
So were you really scared of anything as a kid? Did you say, hey, if I do this, I'm going to get in trouble? It was just, it really was a different mindset back then.
No, it was just a different mindset. You knew what your boundaries were.
Okay.
You knew what your boundaries were because, number one, we didn't have any intermingling with these little kids. They didn't have any mingling. They weren't mingling with us. So if it's out of sight, out of mind. If you don't see it, you're not mingling with these kids. How would you know how they act? We didn't know. I mean, playing golf. I learned how to play golf at Fordwood Country Club. I do know this much. There were a lot of good athletes. I got to tell you right to this day, if I would have had a chance to play golf, you would have never heard about Tiger Woods. I tell you that much. I'll tell you that much.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know squat about golf, so you could probably teach me a lot about how the whole thing works, but
I didn't either. I learned by caddying,
Really?
That's how I learned to play golf.
Wow.
I learned how to play just caddying.
Now, did you want to actually do it as a profession, or never crossed your mind? It's like,
No,
this is
what
fun to
happened,
do on the
we just wanted an opportunity to play on a golf course. We even built our own golf courses. We had 3 holes.
weekend. Start somewhere.
Man, we got a lawnmower and start mowing grass, everything. We don't know how to read no green, are you kidding me? We just mowing, just hit some holes, put a flag in a hole here. We had around the high school where we were, 1 hole here, 1 hole here, 1 hole. And every time we would go to that way, the high school was that way, there were a lot of windows that were broken too.
Man, it's so fun as a kid how much, like what we were talking about earlier, like the whole Jim Crow thing, how much you just don't know. I'm going to say don't care, but you just don't know about it. You're going through life every day. You're doing what kids are still doing to today. You're going out, you're having fun, making your own golf course, just hanging out with everybody and just enjoying life the best that you can without knowing about what's going on outside in the other world. And it's a big difference now where a lot of the young kids now are on their phones and on their iPads, and I always wonder how much they're not getting by not getting out there and just getting your hands dirty, playing around, and getting hurt, like, scraping your knees up because you're doing a bunch of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
It's something that I think that the young kids, an appreciation for, that even growing up where you did, with everything that was going on behind the scenes that you guys didn't see or just didn't really understand at that time, how much you still enjoyed life out there.
Oh, I'd sit here and tell you right to this day, even all in the midst of all the bombings and everything, we had a wonderful childhood. Even the guy, any guy that comes up from 1960 to 1960, 66, 67, 68, they'll tell you they had a wonderful childhood. There wasn't no shootings and stuff like that. There was none of that stuff in our neighborhoods.
Jeez.
Because what we had to do was, if any of the girls were hurt or something like that, these were our sisters. And you had to protect them. And what happened is, protect them from what? A lot of time, from like guys would come up from New Orleans, out of Chicago, be slick and stuff like that, trying to get these young girls. No, you go get up out of here, because the train ran from New Orleans to Chicago, and coming back from Chicago to New Orleans. And what happened is that, guys, New Orleans was the biggest place around, and Chicago, everybody going to, and they bring a lot of game back there. They really brought a lot of game back there, and they see, here come a city slick. We can spot him a mile away. Are you kidding me, man? Get up out of here.
I bet, man.
Oh, man.
That must have been a fun conversation to just, the things that you guys would talk to each other about.
Oh, man, can you believe this guy coming here, down here, with his slick self? You're going to tell us about how bad we're living down here. You living in the, separating everything. Look what I'm doing in New York. But when we found out, a lot of the people, they would come down there, they would rent a car in Chicago or New Orleans, but a lot of time you wouldn't know where they were living at either. Some of them be sleeping in the slums. You come away to Chicago, live in a slum? Are you kidding me? Come on. Yeah, you gonna come out and beat me down with that stuff?
I tell me about it, exactly. What actually? So this sounds like it was like if I was growing up at that time and not knowing what's happening on in the adult world. It seems like that you guys had a blast, but what happened as time went on? Like, if you were to go there now, I think you were telling me this. If you were to go there now, it's nothing like the city that you remember growing up.
No.
What happened?
Time. One of the things is there was no industry there. The only industry there at the time was like the trains, working at the train shop or whatever. There were no manufacturing jobs that were there. Like right now, it hurts because I know what Macomb, Mississippi was all about. And I know the historical value with Brandy from Macomb, Mississippi, Bo Diddley from Macomb, Mississippi. Mississippi is a very productive state with the industry of people promoting where they came from. I'm proud to say I'm from Macomb, Mississippi, and when I came out here, people said, "Oh, you from Mississippi? Yeah, where are you from? England? Get out of here." Yeah, well, we all had to be coming from somewhere. So to see where it is right now, it hurts to a point where the drugs have been infestated everywhere, in every community. It used to be somewhat in the black community, but not anymore. It's everywhere. And the type of drug was heroin, cocaine. Cocaine was around in the 30s, man. So what made it prevalent so much right now? Well, because it's a Hollywood drug a kid made. It money to be made up. A lot of these guys don't want to work 9 to 5 jobs anymore. If you can make money like that fast, it's brutal.
It's making money that fast in that industry. I see why a lot of young people want to do that, because they see the quick buck, they see the bling, they see the attention that you get from it, but also because sort of just how our country has gone. It's like all those manufacturing jobs that you had talked about,
Right.
they're going overseas or they're automated. Now the robots are doing everything.
Yeah.
So if I don't need you to work with your hands in a factory anymore, building cars or whatnot, then it's like, well, what do you do? It's like there's not a lot of other like industries that have a lot of security out there anymore.
Oh, absolutely. When I was coming up, I wanted to go to the shop. I wanted to go to Detroit. I really wanted to go to, in my senior year, I wanted to go to
Motown.
Detroit. I want to go to Detroit and get me a Fleetwood Brougham. I wanted to get me a car. I wanted to help my mom and whatever. That's what I wanted to do. But my mom asked me, son, I just want you to go to college for 1 year. And I knew I wasn't college material. I didn't want to go to college. You kidding me? You had the Vietnam War that was going on at that time. One of the best athletes I've ever seen, his name was John D. Shaw. He was killed in Vietnam. He was my hero. And he was the first quarterback I seen that was a real quarterback in my high school. And when he came back, he just took something away from me. And because you had guys in high school that you wanted to be like. And I wanted to be like him. But he didn't, when I say that wasn't, he didn't have a killer instinct to pick up a gun. Think about this. We didn't have any guns in the neighborhood where we were. If someone went out for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we didn't have no turkey. Are you kidding me? My Mr. John went out and killed a whole bunch of rabbits. We had no roasted turkey and nothing like that. We had some chitlins. Okay.
That's what, pig intestines?
Yeah, pig intestines.
Right, okay.
Man, and it was every New Year's, man. It's them black-eyed peas and chitlins. I mean, everybody's house. So a lot of people today say, "Oh, I remember eating chitlins." No, they were chitlins. Okay,
you gotta say it right.
So that's where that is. And yeah, you mentioned about the neighborhoods and stuff like that. But if you look at the '60s came out. It was a rebellious period. The war, '70s. And right now, it hurts. Not just African American, but it hurts when I see a lot of kids don't communicate humanly. They got their on the phone all the time, and we learn from a lot of people. Just like I stopped you that day, you don't know what a joy. You don't know what a joy for me it was just to communicate with you. You just don't know. You don't know.
I can sense from how deep in conversation we actually got and the things that we talked about that it really is hard to find someone that you just can sit down and have a conversation with. This is one of the reasons why I like doing the show the way I do it, with just me and you sitting down in person, compared to doing the online interviews, because you lose that personability. There's just certain things that we can get in a conversation sitting here across from each other that we wouldn't be able to get if we were on a TV screen to each other.
Absolutely.
If I zoomed you from your house and I had a conversation with you here, it wouldn't be the same at all.
Right.
There's just something about that human interaction that you need to have to be able to get the conversation going.
Right.
So, and I appreciate you telling me that, because it means a lot to see that.
Believe me, I go over to that area sometime just to be at myself, and sometimes just look up into God and say, God, I thank you. I just thank you so much, because the way my wife and I came out here, when I went to college, man, I didn't even know who she was. I just walked up and said, hey, how you doing? You had a beautiful smile. Okay, fine. And I went my way. I didn't see her for 6 months later. Didn't know who she was. I was standing up in the cafeteria begging God for a bologna sandwich right now, because I'm so hungry right now. And all of a sudden, this flash come by me, and somebody dropped their meal book. And I saw it. I got it. So, boy, thank you, Jesus. Got it. Well, I didn't know when she came back to it was her meal book. Oh, I ain't giving this up. I ain't giving this up. So my friends got on my case and told me, give her meal book back. And I gave it to her. And we became friends. And before we got married, we were friends. But before we got married, she quit me 16 times before we got married. 16.
She what, 16 times?
Quit me.
Quit me. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. You gotta go.
I know what you mean.
Okay. She quit 16 times. You ain't quit me no more. I'm tired of this. So what I did was I called my mama. She got me again. Said, have her to come down here. Well, 52 years later, we married. I don't know what her and my mom said in that room, but 52 years later, we married.
And to this day, she never told you what she said to her in that room.
Never. No, I wonder about that. Two things I didn't ask my mom about: her first child that was born, and whatever she said to my wife in that room. I didn't ask her. Nobody. We got on the train, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, I know you got some big shot brothers and sisters. Help me out here, man. Son, I run down on the corner with a cook. And I asked them for something, okay? Man, my wife and I came out here with $500 and she had the $5. Rode the train to New Orleans, and New Orleans crossed Texas. I didn't know Texas was as big as it was. Man, I started hallucinating. I started seeing John Wayne, Indian, Leave It to Beaver, all out here, man. Man, I was crying. And then we landed in Oakland. We didn't know Oakland and San Francisco across the bay from each other. Mm-hmm. Man, the cab driver, this is the first time the cab driver said, he said to me, sir, I looked around. This is California. You calling me sir? It's a white cab driver. Sir, we like a cab? Yeah, take me to the nearest hotel. What did I say that for? In my hometown, they had meters. And they didn't have any meters. You pay 50 cents, you want to go to town. I didn't know nothing about no meters when I came to California. That guy drove me. When I came across the Bay Bridge, now I looked at it, I saw all those lights, and I said, man, Oakland got to be the biggest place I've seen. He said, no, that's not Oakland, that's San Francisco. I started crying, man.
Wow.
I started crying. My wife said, what's wrong? I said, oh, nothing. I didn't want her to know she'll make it. She'll make a fool don't know what he's doing. You kidding me?
Yeah.
The cab driver just dropped us off on 7th and Mission Street right here. And then I walked from 7th and Mission trying to find some. I said, man, I asked one guy there, where do black people live at around here? And he says, well, you go toward Hunters Point. I ain't getting on no bus. I got ripped off. I ain't getting on. I walked up Hayes Street and stood in the middle of the road and said, God, I don't know what I'm doing. We started at 600 Field Street at Field and Buchanan. This is where we started from, right there, 52 years ago.
That's incredible. I mean, it just goes to show you, even back then, where you kind of grow up now and you just have this image about how horrible things were back in the 60s, which there's no doubt there was definitely a lot of things going on back there that just shouldn't have happened and whatnot. We all agree on that part there. But to see that you come through all that, come to California, and just see the opportunity that's actually here, starting from a place where you guys started out to where you're at now. And it's just an incredible journey. Yeah. And, it goes to show you just how much that power of determination, whether you're a religious person or not, just how much that actually plays into you getting to where you want to go in the next step of your life. Yeah. You mentioned something earlier. I know we kind of glossed over, but I want to ask you again before I get to your college stories, because I know you have some good stories there. What was that thing that you were telling me about the Macomb bombings?
Well, they threw more. I made an analogy. It's called the bombing capital of the world, 1964. What had happened was that because we had these white kids living with us in the community, Miss Eileen Quinn was one of the leading people in the Democratic in Macomb in the ACP. We've had John Lewis down there. We had Marion Barry. We had everybody before they became. We had Julian, but we had John. We had all those people in Macomb, Mississippi at the time because of the walkout that we had that Brenda Travis did, and a couple other people walked out of school. So this was the first walkout. Then what had happened was that they threw more bombing. Oliver Emery, who was the editor of a paper called Enterprise Journal, where he put out in his journal, Macomb, Mississippi, bombing capital of the world. We didn't even know how to be afraid, man, because there were churches, there were people that were being bombed. Walker's Chapel Church, everybody in the community, because it was a historical black church. All the men got up and slept in shifts to make sure they weren't going to blow that church. They blew Society Hill up. That's what it was called, bombing capital of the world. And that's my analogy. I said they threw more bombs in Macomb, Mississippi in 1964 than they did in Vietnam that year.
What was the trigger point in that? Like, why that city of all cities to just start doing all that in? Well,
it was a progressive city. It was just when I say you had a lot of strong people there. I mean, you had a lot of strong people there. They had big businesses. Brandon's father, Mr. Fred Bakes. I mean, these people. You might have heard about the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was burned to the ground because of it was used to call it Black Wall Street. Well, Macomb, Mississippi was just like that at one time. I mean, there was a lot. I mean, we didn't go after. People had their own jobs, had their own stuff going on, and for some reason or another, they wanted to derail, and so they didn't want voting rights. They didn't want the integration of the schools and everything. So to send a message, they would go by people's house and put crosses in the yard and everything to target them and stuff like that. So that's why we call it Macomb, Mississippi, bombing capital of the world, 1964.
Wow. And so how, what did they do? They just go around to every church?
Those churches weren't guarded, like the churches are right now.
Right.
Oh, how you going to blow, this is what used to get me. How is it that you can go to church on Sunday, and on your side of the street, you can go to church on Sunday, we're going to church on Sunday, both believing in the same God, but you want to go and blow this church up in the name of God? Come on, are you kidding me? So that was a hard pill for me to start. Why would you burn the churches up? Because they know that was the stronghold of the African American community to heal us together, is the church. It was then and is right now.
So who were these guys? Were they part of an organization? Just a bunch of random dudes thought it'd be funny to do that?
No. Well, you read some of them even, and you read about the bombing. Some of them, they said, were, some of them were the police, they said. Some of them were, they said. When they blew up Miss Quinn's house, they
blew up her house?
They blew up her house. They blew up her house, and they stick 11 sticks of dynamite under her house.
Wow.
And her kids were in that room, and it just so happens out. So what happened when they blew it up, they went and arrested her for blowing her own house up.
How does that make any sense to?
Duh. So, and then what happened is that they all went to Washington to meet Lyndon Baines Johnson to have J. Edgar Hoover, because he was no friend of black people either. I mean, he sent the FBI down there to spy on, to see who the radical was, Dr. King or whoever. But we didn't know, if anytime you can't go to the federal government and ask them for help. That's why when they blew up Mrs. Quinn's house, that's one of the reasons those people, all the black, we never did that before. They never did that before. That's one of the reasons they took to the streets then, say, if the federal government not going to come down and help us, then who going to help us?
Wow. So, did you ever get a chance to, or did Dr. King ever come down to Macomb, Mississippi?
No, he didn't. He, all the rest of Julian Bond and all the rest of them guys, long before they became with Dr. King and stuff, all of them guys came down. Marion Barrow, in fact, Marion Barrow, who was a mayor of New York, mayor of Washington D.C., where he's from Itta Bena, Mississippi, where I went to school.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's just it still blows my mind. I mean, probably shouldn't use that term. How they arrest somebody for accusing her of blowing up her own house.
Yeah, you can read that. Anyone that want to read, you can read it. Called Macomb, bombing capital of the world, Macomb, Mississippi, and they can read that whole article about Oliver Emery, where he puts it there, and they arrested her for her own house.
So what's going through your mind as a kid? Because you were about, what, 15 years old at the time?
15, yeah.
What's going through your mind as you're seeing this, and how does that, do you sort of get jaded? Do you start looking at people more suspiciously? Do you not trust the police? Do you know what's going through your mind?
No, we did not. Is that, it's sad to say, but there was another house. There was just another house that got blown up. We didn't have any reason to think that these guys were going to ever get caught. We didn't think that. We just only had to stay on the lookout or watch out for our own places. I know, because my mother was a leader, I knew I had to watch out. We didn't walk around on eggshells thinking this might happen, because it's all, anything can happen any time to anybody, but it was all wilderness. We were just like a little town, but everybody watched out for each other. Everybody watched it.
So after those bombings occurred in, was it 67, right?
It's 64.
64, okay. Once that round happened, pretty much did it become quiet at that point after that?
No, this guy named Jim Lewis, I was telling you about, wrote his book Here and Now.
What's the book called again?
Here and Now.
Here and Now, okay.
He wrote this book, and he was one that lived with us. He came to my mom. He said, if I might read this?
Yeah.
He said, it's the Democratic Party, summer 1964. It's bombed. They said this was a court. That's where the people were voting rights. They were coordinating there. He said it was bombed, and I met many other people in the civil rights movement. Webb Owens and Pullman, Mrs. Sarah Cotton, who teach me how to play Bid West. That was my mom. So what happened is that those kind of things happen. We didn't expect any justice to find out who people that did that. We didn't. We really did. At least I didn't. But I wasn't afraid. I had no fear, none. I didn't know how to be afraid. I'm more afraid of what I'm seeing now than I saw then.
So what are you seeing? I mean, well, we can go into that for days on end, but what are you seeing specifically now about whether the young people growing up now or just the way society is? Because if you think about it, you would think with how far we've come as a country in terms of rights and opportunities for more people, that we should be doing better than we were in the 60s. So are you kind of saying that we are, but there's areas that seem to be getting worse?
I have to look at this. This country's only 200 and some years old. And other countries got thousands a year. But this country gives opportunity and a chance to everybody in the world who want to escape tyranny, whatever way you want to go. If you get a chance to come to America, whether it be the Italian, whether it be the Jews, whether it be Mexico, whether it be Haiti, whether it be the Irish, anyone that's got a denomination, whether it be the Russian, got Russian here, right here, Germantown, okay? You got a chance at what? Because you have a constitution to say guarantee you those inalienable rights. Now, is it for all? That's what it says, but is it really? Not all the time. We're still growing. We still got some problems. We're going to have these problems. And to be the biggest apple on the tree, I'll tell you what really got me was that in 1961, I didn't know how to pronounce the man's name. I went home when he came to this country. I called him Nicotine. My mom fell out laughing. It was Nikita Khrushchev. When he came to this country in 1961, he said, "We would take America where our founders shot." Oh, you got to be kidding. We're the biggest power in the world. But I didn't know what he was talking about. It's the enemy within.
Just to be clear, because I'm pretty sure a lot of young people aren't going to know who that is, but this was the premier or basically the president of the Soviet Union or Russia back then. Yeah, our big enemy at the time that we said that's our. So when he comes over here to this country at the time and says, "We can take you out from the inside out."
Yeah, he said, we would take America where our founders shot. I didn't understand what he was doing at the time, the same that he was doing propaganda. So there's no doubt in my mind that there are other countries like to play the race game into this country against each other. It has happened. It had happened, and it's still happening. But when we get a chance to recognize it, just black or white or Asian or whatever, got to be able to understand that if the enemy within is us against us, are you kidding me? Then that leave other forces outside to come in and say, "We told you guys can't live together." That's the same thing that happened to us in Mississippi, where these white kids that were living with us in our house said, "You ain't supposed to be living together." But they did, and a lot of people died for these people to have basic rights. If those white kids had not come from all over the country, James Goodman, Michael Schrenner, if those kids hadn't come down, the civil rights movement was dead. It was just black things. Y'all could play. These white kids, these are American kids. They're coming down south saying that.
I never realized that, because when you growing up as a kid and you're learning about the civil rights movement, even now, you hear about the big names like Dr. King, and Representative Lewis and whatnot, and everything that they did in Selma, and then the Rosa Parks thing on the bus. But you don't hear about that story. You don't hear about the kids who came down, the white kids who came down, and actually were able to help spread the message to say, "This is what I actually see down here and going on. Like, this is what we got to change." You never hear about that.
I'm trying to tell you, because the first time I ever met Joan Baez, she came to Mississippi. A lot of these people came down to Mississippi, and when they had to go through training to know what to expect when they came down to Mississippi. And that's what Michael Swinner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman, they went through this training because there are some things that you couldn't do, you couldn't fight back on, or you really would be murdered. You couldn't sit at these lunch counters like that. You would be murdered. And it was brutal. It was really brutal about the mentality of it. That was the key thing there. And a lot of the kids went over, four of my classmates went to school over to the white side. There were a lot of us couldn't go over there. We weren't, how can I say, we weren't educated, prepared to go. Not that we didn't have the ability, but the fear that's stacked on top of who you're sitting next to poses a problem. And that's what we were.
It's just so, if you were somebody who was still jaded by the past of like 60 years ago, it would be hard for somebody not to blame you and say, okay, given what you've went through, what you've seen, I can see why you're bitter at the world. But you don't have that. You're very positive. You look at the bright side of everything, despite the fact of having every reason possible to say why you may not like something, why you may not agree with something now. That's huge, because what you see now for many different voices out there, for many different topics out there, is that there is a lot of the victim mindset that because something happened to me or something happened to somebody over here, I deserve to get all this special treatment and whatnot.
Right.
Whereas you came from an environment where you had every reason in the world to hate the system, every reason in the world to not trust government. You're still saying, no, that's not.
No, I'm not. Because my thing is that if there's another government that will allow you to have the basic rights, those people, there are people, let me just give you a good example. Okay? From the exodus of Africa to the United States, there were 75 million black people threw it off in the Atlantic Ocean. Everybody else came by standing up with the Statue of Liberty and said, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled mass, okay? We came laying down. Okay, so we're here. So now what are you going to do? We ain't all of it, we're not going back. So what do you do here, okay? Yeah, for 400 years that of slavery, it took time. But the Constitution has only been up for 200 some years. So you're talking about 600 some years right now of the same thing. I keep telling people all the time, isn't it a wonder that they call post-traumatic stress disorder? Okay? Why? I don't have that. An African-American man, we should have every right to be mad at that, but I'm not. I can't speak for everybody, but it's all how we were raised, what I believe and what I believe in. Yeah, I do believe in the sanctity of this country. Yeah, I know we have some problems. And we're going to continue to have problems. But I'm not going to stick my head in the sand and say, oh, Eric, kumbaya. It ain't that way. It's not that way. And that's one of the reasons, and I want to say this. That's why in the 60s when I came up, you had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown. You had a lot of black athletes that would cross the board, use their platform not to protest with guns and everything, said this is wrong. You got a lot of these athletes right out here right now. They want to get on television. They want to talk about the game itself, but they don't want to talk about the reality of the questions. Right? Don't hit me with no, I'm not political minded. You being black, you're already political minded. What are you talking about? Now, because you got yours, and you can get on TV, you do all these different things. Even in Congress right now, for the basic rights for people, not black people, people. I don't care who they are, people. They want to squash that because it's power. You got a platform over here, man, that you use your platform. Yeah, they can blame Colin Kaepernick all they want to for what he stood, but they paid him for blackballing. Okay, that's one thing, but he stood up, okay? Now, did I see some things that were happening in there that not only, that was just his platform, that's all. Mm-hmm. He had more guts than a lot of these other mega athletes that have a chance. Yeah, go and take your billions, millions or whatever, okay, and stand on the sideline. And I got to say this, one of the entertainers who said, well, it ain't no time for kneeling anymore. I got to tell you, that really rubbed me wrong, because that's what happened to John Lewis at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama. Listen, we kneeled. There ain't no guns. They kneeled, man, to pray. And so this big time entertainer going to talk about we don't need to be kneeling anymore. No more. You ain't never kneeled. So what gets me upset with a lot of these some so-called athletes, sometimes big, got a platform, they don't come my way. I don't mind telling them how I feel and where I am, because it ain't fighting for a cause, the black cause. You're talking about fighting for a cause of righteousness. That's where I am.
That's very big, because a lot of people would push back on, one of the guys who gets a lot of flack is LeBron James, because he's the biggest name in basketball, if not the biggest sports star in the world. And regardless of whether you agree with him or not, he has a lot of influence. If he says something, people listen, again, regardless of where he stands on certain things. And, there was one camp that says somebody like LeBron James needs to stand up and say things when he sees something wrong with society. We had that whole thing with the whole George Floyd thing and what he was actually saying. But then there's the other side that it says, okay, if you're going to speak about that, how come you're silent about the NBA's relationship with China and what they're doing over there?
Come on.
And it puts him in a position where it's like, well, do I continue to speak on what I believe in and just kind of look the other way for the other maybe atrocities? Or is it easier for me to just not say anything and say, nope, I'm just, ask me all the questions you want about what I do for a living. Don't ask me any questions about that, which I think is what a lot of athletes probably have to end up saying. It's like, if I go down that one rabbit hole, are they going to come at me some other way? And then I'm kind of like, lost with that.
This is what Dr. King said. Dr. King said when he won the Nobel Peace Prize, that was $240,000. Okay. He had a platform that voting rights and the problems that was happening there in these inner cities, these neighborhoods where Aretha Franklin's dad was on there. What he did was he said, this is, say what you mean on paper. He stood up and said up. This man was an educator, doctor, okay? He was teaching people. And what happened is that they thought he was going to use that $240,000 that he got for the Nobel Peace Prize. Man, we passed, we had $5,000 because he gave that money to the cause. He gave that to the cause, okay? He wasn't in it for money. Now, what he, as being the kind of person that he was in it for the Vietnamese as well as the American. He said, how in the world can you go over and bomb the Vietnamese and you bombing your own people here at home who are going to war to fight the Vietnamese? He spoke out about it. Malcolm X spoke out about it. A lot of these, Angela Davis spoke out about it. So you got these athletes, you can't straddle the fence. Nobody asked you to take on the world's problem. The world's got enough problem in itself. But if there's an issue, well, what about what's going on in China? Those problems were created in China long before LeBron started playing basketball. Why put that on him?
I think because of how much money the NBA gets from China, because they're let's just call it what it is. They are a big financial incentive for the NBA. And we see it in Hollywood with too. The little things that we see that, whether you agree with it or not, there is influence there because of the money that's actually coming in. So a lot of the pushback that someone like LeBron James would get is that, okay, are you not saying anything about the atrocities in China because of the money involved that are going to affect your pocketbook? I think that's the only place where he would get pushback. It's difficult. It's a difficult spot to be in. I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, but these are some of the things that you hear on both sides of the equation. If you're going to speak up, do you have to say everything, or do you only want to talk about what you want to? It's everybody has their own.
But that's what Kareem did. Kareem spoke about everything. That's why he challenged these athletes. Now, look. Oscar Robertson, who was the one who developed the NBA Players Association, okay? These guys are making millions and millions of bucks, okay? One time, even Shaq didn't know Lenny Wilkins was a basketball coach. He didn't know he was a star, okay? That's just how much history that these guys don't know. They know about how to make the money and everything. They know how to be entrepreneurship. That's one reason, like these. Me personally, I'm not going to pay a dime to see a millionaire cry. I'm not. I would not do that.
To see a what?
A millionaire cry. Oh man, I lost the game. Get out of my face, okay? I'm not, if they're crying, you got these guys who don't want to play, whatever. Okay, fine. I'm the kind of person they don't like talking to because man, you got to. Would you trade your job for a window washer? No, then shut up. You feel what I'm saying? The guy
I got you, man.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yep.
The guy washing the windows in the Empire State Building, they're washing these windows around here. He washing these windows for save his family life, and he want to catch a football or bounce a basketball. And you talking about you want some rights? Are you kidding me? And if you make it whatever the salary is, and you making that, well then switch jobs and come out here and be street cleaner and see how far you would get.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying?
It makes sense. Like, what would be your advice to give to a professional athlete who says, I'm getting paid really well. My family's taken care of. I got business ventures. I'm doing good for myself and my family. I know I can speak about this topic over here because it's easier for me to speak about. But if I speak about this topic over here that affects my paycheck,
Right.
do I not say anything or do I speak up about it and then take the risk that I'm going to basically be losing a lot of money if that comes up?
Give a good example. You remember when Colin Kaepernick first kneeled? Mm-hmm. You remember how many NFL teams and the players all kneeled?
Oh, yeah.
And remember how after that it started dwindling down? Mm-hmm. Because some black players said, no, this affected my pocketbook. Mm-hmm. I got my wife and I got the food feed. Colin can go and take that hit by himself. I got your support, man, but I'm going to stay in the back. I got to keep on making my money. You got to call it real like it is. And these guys are not calling it real like it is. Some of them on TV are doing it, but look at the reality. Whatever he took a hit on by kneeling, it was never about the American flag. It was about the atrocity that America, the same way John Carlos or Thomas Smith did in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. You can parade this biggest apple on the tree. It's so beautiful, man, but we got a lot of worms here. We got some things to work out. You can't hold one section of your children back, man. We are all American. We all bleed red blood. Mm-hmm. Regardless of your face or whatever. If you're an American, you bleed America, you can't separate or discriminate. But we do have it. And so when they have these athletes, I would, if they just go and play basketball, fine. But shut your mouth when they get ready to come to political issues and everything. If you don't know what you're talking about and you haven't done enough study, that's why they got mad at Michael Jordan when he was playing with the Bulls, and that guy was running for Congress back in North Carolina, and Michael Jordan, his mom asked him, I want you to support the guy. He said, I don't know that guy. What? You don't know this guy here who's African American? You don't know him, but you know Jesse Helms, who's a stone racist? Are you kidding me? But I don't want to get involved. I just want to continue to do my art. Are you kidding me? There are more people. We lost 58,000 men in Vietnam. A lot of them were good basketball players. A lot of football players, man. And if they didn't maintain a certain grade point average, they dead in Vietnam, brought home.
It's just, going back to the Michael Jordan example, it's, putting himself back in the situation back in the 90s or 80s or 90s when that actually happened. You wonder if he would change his mind now. Hindsight's 2020. You can say, would I have made a difference? Right. But putting him in the mindset where he was back then, maybe he was just say, hey, you know what? If I go down that route, maybe it's going to affect my paycheck, and therefore I got to look out for myself first, and then in a way, you could say he never asked for it. He became so good at what he was doing that, and pretty much made the name for the NBA. And everybody's, my generation, we all look up to Michael Jordan as the greatest of all time. Right. And so if he goes down that route, because he was notorious for not getting his hands involved with that for whatever reason. He had the platform where if he spoke, people would actually listen. Like, oh, I never knew about that, but Michael Jordan says that's an issue. We should do something about it. And he said, you know what, this is business, and that's separate. Whether he was right or wrong, everybody has their own opinion on it, and he chose to say, you know what, this is my business, and then I'm going to keep that separate.
And that's okay. Because I remember when Jim Brown went and asked him, Charles Barkley and Tiger Woods to come down when the Crips and the Bloods was going at it. And I don't know for a fact, but you didn't hear anything about the Crips and the Blood after Jim Brown had a meeting with them. So come on, man, are you kidding me? Or even right now, what's going on in Chicago? I mean,
Chicago, man, that's just
come on.
Yeah.
And that was an open prayer. That's where a lot of us in 113 my graduating class, about 109 went to Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee. I'm the only one came west, okay? Because there you have families there and everything. But I'm just grateful to come out west where I am.
I was going to ask you, why up to the Midwest? Was it because of the jobs?
We had no job. we just got out of college. We didn't know where we were going. We really did not. The only thing I knew, my wife said she didn't want to go to Chicago, Milwaukee, or Detroit. Okay, well, you want to go to Spain?
I mean,
just like that. I said, okay, where do you want? We just did this in Oakland because she had a brother out here. So she did this, and this is where we ended up at.
That's that's a good way to put it. I would think that if you wanted to go to the Midwest at that point, it's because of all the auto manufacturing jobs that are in that whole industry, to say, you know what, that's where the opportunities are at. Because back then, that's where the opportunities were in this country, was all in the Rust Belt, Detroit, Chicago, Wisconsin. Yeah. They were all intertwined with the auto agency, with the auto industry. So I assume that might be, hey, that's where all the opportunities are at.
Well, before I got married, that was my first thing where she wanted to go. But after that, I was left in the dark, man.
That's just, sorry, I'm just running to write this one down here before I forget, because half the time I got to write down where we actually talked about the good stuff so I know where to clip everything in the back. But that's getting over here to Oakland. When you guys got here to make a new life for yourself, what were you thinking about as far as what California was going to offer you? Or what was actually, this is probably a better idea, what was your opinion of what was over here? Because obviously you got sort of a shell shock when the cab driver said, "Hi, sir."
Man, look, when he dropped us off on 7th and Mission Street, they were just building BART. Okay.
Yeah. Which is the local subway for anybody who doesn't know about the Bay Area.
Man, I didn't even know. Number one, we were out of college, we hadn't gone. Here you got a job. You had to get a credential. Down there, you just graduate from college, you can start teaching. Then you have to go to school an extra year to get a credential here. Well, wait a minute. Well, my wife and I, at 600 Field Street, what we did was, we got there. She found a job working for the Bank of America. It took me a long time because you have to know somebody to be around. We didn't know nobody. We were going to stay at the YMCA down here. Yeah. We didn't know nothing, man. We were just blind.
Jesus.
And then just didn't know nothing about God, didn't know nothing. I just wanted a job to find out how we could do different things here. That's all.
Well, how was the culture different here? I mean, it had to have been it's not like how you grew up, whether positive or negatively. I mean, how was it over here for you?
Number one, I didn't know what to take. The first time I ever seen a Chinese guy, it wasn't Chinese in Mississippi, Hispanics, Polynesian. First time I saw a Polynesian guy, I thought it was a brother. He said, "I'm not." I said, "Where you from?" He said, "I'm from Tonga." And where's Tonga? Okay? And I had to learn. It took me 5 years to adjust, to learn, which had enlightened me and excited me to know that there is another world besides black and white. There are people with cultures. Man, I mean, when I first came here, man, I was reading the newspaper and everything. Man, I went to, we were hungry. I mean, I was hungry, man. I mean, I went to bar mitzvahs. I went to Polynesian weddings. I went to Korean weddings. You know, the after party.
That's a lot of good food at some of those Polynesian weddings. Oof.
Come on.
Yeah.
And see, the only thing we had down there is cornbread and stuff like that. When you talking about eating lumpias and stuff like that, and pancit and
roast pig, the big.
I mean, you kidding me? All of that, man. I didn't know nothing, but it was exciting for me because I had this thing for learning, and I'm a people person. I love when people say that, but I actually love people. I love people. People give me energy to talk to them. I don't care what color, because when people say they don't see color, if you're looking for it, you'll find it, but I don't. Because if I was looking at color, I would have met those kids coming out of the house that were white. Are you kidding me? What are you? Where you from? Well, my family is from Germany. Oh, okay, fine. Where you from? Okay, from Peking. Okay, fine. What these things was interesting. These things was interesting to me, and so that's why the Bay Area excited me, man. Because I learned so much. I learned a lot when I was here.
Wow. I mean, just to see how this area has changed. Well, I want to say changed because this is what I know. I grew up on the East Bay, so I've known this whole the diversity of the Bay Area all my life, the different cultures, different countries. And you're right. If I grew up in Mississippi, for example, where there's not a lot of different cultures there, you're just only exposed to, a certain few elements. That's all you're going to know. When you come over here, it's like, wow, there's a whole different world from different countries across the Pacific, Japan, China, Tonga, Fiji, and it's like Afghanistan, like Fremont across the bay has the biggest Afghanistan population in the entire country.
Absolutely.
Fremont, it's like of all places in the country that would, most people think New York has the most of everybody. Like, no, like Fremont has biggest Afghan population in this country.
Yeah, outside of Afghanistan, right.
It's just when you meet everybody from different cultures in your jobs around here and you start learning different things and you start getting how one of the biggest things that I've seen is just how people who are here from the first generation, like they came from the other country over here and they remember it. And they just talk about the differences and just how happy they are being here.
Oh, absolutely.
And a different appreciation for the opportunities that we have over here that unfortunately I see a lot of young people almost taken for granted because in fairness, they don't know what life is like outside of this city, outside this boundary. They don't know what life is like when you don't know how you're going to put food on the table, where you're going to find a job because the government's usually here to help you in some way, shape, or form. But people who come from overseas, it's like they are so appreciative of what they have and the opportunities to buy a home and to have a life for their kids that they couldn't have over there. And it puts it into perspective, and it really gets somebody who, like me, who's been born and raised here, kind of gets you to open your eyes more to say, well, you really do need to appreciate what we have. It's not perfect by any means.
Right.
Everybody knows we have a lot of problems in this country, but name me one other country, like you were telling me earlier, where it's anywhere better than this.
When I first came here, black people living in Hunters Point, at Oakland and everything, okay? We came out of here expecting nothing. Nothing. We really didn't. And when we started meeting people in the black community and everything, we were moving on. It was just progress. When you work and do something, well, how did you guys do that fast? Fast like what? You lived out in the avenues? Oh, yeah? Ain't no black people out there. I'm out there. Well, how'd you get out there?
Wow.
I rode the 5 McAllister. Well, out there to the beach. Went and looked at the apartment. Said, you got an apartment for me? Yeah. Okay, fine. That's how we got it. That took guts. Guts is when I lived in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Guts is when you live in Mississippi trying to go through that maze. Here you have an opportunity and you won't take it, then it's your responsibility. Don't put that on me and think there's an opportunity I see you have here. It's like this college system here. When I found out at CSM that these kids leave high school and then go to CSM or junior college, and then after that 4-year school, are you kidding? And without paying? Are you kidding me?
CSM being the College of San Mateo, which is a junior college.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then City College. Are you kidding me? You got this all. That's why when I was working as a counselor, I didn't. A lot of parents didn't like me at all because I wasn't taking no prisoners when they got ready to come to educate with these kids. Because my job, I was working for the school district at the time, and I look at the category where these kids are identified. The majority of black kids are classified as 3, but they wasn't going to college prep courses. Well, my job was to find out why they weren't going to college prep courses, okay? Well, I would make home visits and everything. So, yeah, well, my son tried to do this. When the last time you been up to school to see about your kids' grades? I don't have time. You birthed them. I didn't. Well, listen, and this really got sticky. I said, you're going to have to come and check on your child. You're going to have to come and see what this kid. You can't blame the school just for your kids failing. That's your responsibility. Now, if you don't come up and check on him at such a time, we're going to prosecute you for the full extent of the law. And you'll put me in jail because yes. I had to put that out there to do that because the school district at AMA, average daily attendant, they get money for these kids coming to school. You can't come to school here and then go out and play basketball in the gym and then the teachers let you because they don't want to social promote you. No, I stopped all of that.
So was this you talking to African-American parents?
Yeah, man.
And what was I gotta be careful saying this, but what was the sentiment that they're giving you? Are they looking at you like you're supposed to be on my side, or
no? They would look at me. They looked at me that they've come to California and made it. You come from, you'll bring your Mississippi ways out here, and telling us how to live. I ain't telling you how to live. I know how hard it is for education in Mississippi, and you have a chance and an opportunity to get your child an education here, and you want to blame the school just for your kid's failure. I'm not buying that. If we fought too hard to get education across the board from everybody, and you make an excuse for your child, that's what I did. Man, everybody they were mad with me, and I said, okay, fine. They had to have a meeting with me one day and ask me, and this was really ask me explain.
The school district or the parents had to have a meeting?
The parents. We had a parents. Well, this is not Mississippi. No kidding. What does that have to do with your kid going to school? And I challenged. I wasn't backing down after what my mom and what we had gone through, and them kids, young white kids coming from Berkeley all over, what we had gone through with the bombings and everything. And then you gonna make excuse for your child because your child is not succeeding, and you don't even come to the school to find out what's going on? Well, no. If I got any responsibility for the school district and state of California, I'm gonna challenge you on it.
So and I think this is a lot of issues that even school districts are still going through now, or just in general, is why not? Like, what is it about, I mean, parents, regardless of race, taking out of the equation, what is it about just parenting that seemed to have gone right when you were growing up in Mississippi, where everybody was looking out for each other? Again, in a time where you could have made every excuse in the world why you want to be very bitter. Yeah. Yet over here, even at the time in California, which I like to say we're in a better position now with our rights and whatnot, but even back then, what is it where did that sentiment come from? Do you believe it's maybe parents are missing, or maybe they had kids too young, didn't understand it? Do you believe it's a religious thing? What do you think is coming?
What I think it is that you cannot have these children as your friend. Your child is your child. From the ages of 1 year old to he's 90, or she's 90, that's still your child. You're still there to give them the instructions of the do's and the don'ts, regardless of how old they are. If they get out 18 years old, do all the things that you're supposed to be doing at 18 years old to apply for a job out here. Do the things that you're supposed to be doing that you know that are right. And what are the things that call them right? You know when you're steering yourself wrong. I always tell these guys, if you can't change your friends, you got to change your friends. Come on. And what happened is that I tell them a lot of the kids, I have so many of them tell me thank you to this day because I didn't back down from them. These kids are not our friends, these are our children. In my neighborhood, if I was to act up in school against a teacher and some parent heard about it, number one, I got a spank from that parent. And then I got home, then my mom heard about it. And my dad wouldn't whip me. My mom did. If she heard about it, disrespecting her name out in there, oh no, you got to get this dog. When they outlawed spanking, okay, fine. I'm glad they did it when I came out. Okay.
Well, the things that my dad, rest his soul, but it was a different time on how to discipline people back then. They accepted it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I still struggle to figure out where this whole mindset came from. Like, is it that people just don't know that maybe that you shouldn't have kids when you're 14, 15, or 16 years old? Is it that there is an excuse out there that the government's against me or the world's against me, therefore I'm going to let my kids do what I got to do? How do we get to the point now where basically you grew up in what was basically called the projects over there, right, and everybody looked out for each other, yet in so many communities around the country, right, and we have them here too in the Bay Area, right, there's just certain neighborhoods where you go in and there just seems to be no respect for each other. There's no law. People are going after each other. Yeah. Where did this whole thing come from? What you've seen?
Well, when we had the 60s, coming out of the 60s, the problem that I saw, that I'm 73 years old, what I see is that we had the 60s. That was a strong generation of the foundation. You had the Kennedys, you had that going on, okay? In the 70s, we had a war that was going to 74, and people's mindset was that. And then, I'm gonna be honest with you, when the movie Superfly came out,
Superfly.
yeah,
Rick James.
that changed a lot. That because, Ron O'Neal could never get a job after Superfly, because the same way Michael Jordan did with basketball around the world, same way that movie did to the black community.
Really?
Yeah. You think about what the drugs and everything, how fast it was made, and how he made it. Now, in that movie, he won because he wanted to get out of the game. But he also had a hit out on the big dealer who was the director. So that put a mindset, wow, if that movie did that, there were a lot of black exploitation movies at the time in the 70s and everything. It really what saved Hollywood. And then the 70s, it's kind of relaxed. It came by the me generation, everything about me. And then the 80s came, just say no to drugs. Are you kidding me? Now, we don't own I'm talking about African American, we don't own no planes, trains, or buses. But it comes here and goes to your community, how we might be we might be the consumers, not the distributors. It has to get into our community somehow. So when that movie found out, how you think the Crips and the Bloods got it going on in Los Angeles? All that killing that was going on. It was just about drug money. The Jamaican posses, when they was coming over, then spread out through the United States. And then in the 90s, here come Eazy-E and Tupac and all that. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. And then you look at it and then when you have the women, the young girls that get into these movies for these gangster rappers. Look at the women. That's why Dionne Warwick and a lot of the other women say, you're talking about our children here. But this was a whole nother generation that wasn't back there when I came up, because I do not look down on women and see some of the stuff that they're doing and some of the women that want to get into the movies and in the rap music and all that. And then here come the 90s. And then now we got the 2000s and everything. Just think about the fentanyl and the drugs and stuff that's going on. So it was hitting the black community, it's hitting every community. And people talking, they can say what they want to about China. Everything is coming from China, okay? So you have to have an import to export. Are you kidding me? So we got to stop pointing fingers and look what they're doing over there and look what we're doing here. We got to start cleaning our house up, and we got to start cleaning it within, not outward. We can't point fingers at nobody else while three fingers are pointed back at us. When I say us, I'm not talking about African, I'm talking about Americans. Until we have the generation to come up and they say that the me generation, the X generation, I don't know nothing about that. I just know the generation came in the 60s and we had to do a lot of fighting. A lot of people died, black and white, died in the country in the 60s, where it was an unjust war or not. It was war. And 58,000 men died in that war. And I was in the draft lottery, scared to death. My draft was 3, 4, to 6, scared. I was going to have to go regardless of what the racism was in this country.
One thing about what you just said that, the more I think about it, the more it seems to make sense, is that as you grew up, it was pretty much, us, mean Americans, versus the communist regime. It was us versus them. We had an enemy, if you want to call it that. That was what the focus was. You heard it on TV, you heard it in school. It was like, that was what everybody had to focus on. The Vietnam War was just an extension of that, because we had to go and we got to get the communists out of Vietnam.
Absolutely.
And so it just, whether you, and most of us can really agree that we shouldn't have been there, but it is what it is at this point now, and it was just an extension of what the original enemy was at that time. Come early 90s and the Soviet Union no longer exists, we sort of didn't have an enemy. It's like, where do we get our attention to? We had that time in the early to mid 90s or to the late 90s where we were trying to figure it out, and then which is like when all these things in East LA came about, the Crips and the Bloods, when you start hearing about that. Then 9/11 happens. All of a sudden now we have an enemy again. Okay, who got us? We have to go and get them. Country sort of united a little bit on that. You didn't hear about some of the little things that were happening on, or they weren't happening as much as they were in the times where we didn't have an enemy. Now you're kind of where we're at now, and it's like, who is our enemy?
Who is our enemy?
It's like that's where when Nikita Khrushchev said we're going to kind of get you from within. You sort of turn the narrative on. Okay, well, the enemy is us. It's us against this person or that group, or they don't believe what I believe in. And if you just step back and you just look down upon it, you can see how it's like, man, yeah, it's all who has what over here now. God forbid something happens to this country again from some other outside power. Maybe our focus would shift onto that. Right. But in the meantime, it's a lot of these little things that says, this person has what I don't. Therefore, instead of saying, how do I get that? How do I work to get that? It's they got there by cheating, or they gamed the system. Therefore, they're wrong, and I have to get my way some other way. And
no, you're absolutely. You just think about how come we had to get the Russians out of Afghanistan, got them out of there. We built the Taliban.
Come on. People forget that.
And we worked with Osama bin Laden, taught him everything. Okay, now we're gonna switch. Then we're gonna go to Iraq. Okay, bin Laden said, "Look, you can't have the infidels on our land."
Well, that was Kuwait when Saudi Arabia said, "Come on in." That's when he just blew his mind that they let the Americans in there.
Yeah, you can't get them. Come on, man. This is an Islamic country. Yeah, but this oil, this is money. It show you about their mentality at that time. Yeah, this money coming in, man. But we can change. Ideology next. No, let's continue to get this money. When you look at how Dubai was built on sand, how it's being built, and now here you got the Americans that are out. Then you got China, you got Russia again, talking about the mineral resources in Afghanistan. So now, every time it had to be somebody we had to fight against, whether it be the Japanese, whether it be the Germans, whatever. Now, we left to ourselves, and the rest of the world is looking. They ain't got nothing to fight for. We've always, it would have been America and India coming here, or fighting with each other on these things. It's something that we have to do. But how can you put your finger? How can you put your finger on an American? An American is all of us, regardless of race, creed, or color. It is the country, and that's what the people are forgetting to look at. You can't point your finger at an American, because we're all Americans.
I know. You mentioned to me something once that during that conversation that we had that I always wanted to bring up to you again, how you were getting, well, now I know that you were getting pushback when you were working at the school district from parents because you were just trying to tell them, hey, you got to watch out for your kids because they're not getting their work done, and you're the parent, you're responsible for them, and you were getting pushback for that. As opposed to, oh, wow, to me it would have been, I'm screwing up, I got to go fix it. Thank you so much for telling me. But you were getting pushback from that. And you told me a story about how you ran into some young kids somewhere that were sagging their pants, whatever, like young, probably 14, 15-year-old kids, and you're just telling them, hey, pull your pants up. And then they came after you. And it puts you in a reality that you may have to watch out for your own self because if I go tell this young kid to step up his game, you don't know what he's carrying now.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's not something you had to worry about back in the day. A parent would tell you, you would just listen.
Well, to be honest with you, I was on 4th Street in San Mateo, okay? And this dude had his pants wrapped below his rear end. And you see all the dark spots in his drawers, okay? So, out of respect, I went up to him and I said, yo, brother, come here, let me talk to you for a minute. What? I said, man, why don't you pull your pants up on you, man? I can see all your stuff, man. Hey, man, I don't like the way you come at me. Now, right then, I wanted to hit him in the mouth. I really did. I really wanted to hit him in the mouth. I really did. That's what, because I couldn't have said that to my parent or anybody in my neighborhood at the time. I really wanted to grab him and hit him in his mouth and say, let me, you little chump. Let me pull your pants up on you, okay? And I would have done that, but I had to take a step back. I had to take a step back because I don't know what he got. I don't know who his friends are around. I don't want anyone to say I put my hand on this kid unjustly. So that kind of handcuffed me for a minute. and kind of watch where I'm going and what I say when I didn't have to do that before out of respect. And he called his little friends over. He man, this dude, I don't like the way this dude talk to me. And now I'm thinking, okay, now I know if I get out of this here, somebody's going to get hurt. And I don't know how this is going to turn out. And I'm asking myself, of all the training you had through the civil rights, when is it for you to back away? My testosterone was here. Man, I know, one thing I do know, if I was going to get one of them wasn't going to come back to life, and the other one going to end up in the hospital. So now I know what's going to happen with me. You know, wife got a husband in jail now for the rest of his life. So I had to, all the training and the boundaries that I set, I had to really look at them at a split second than to make an actual move. That's where I went off. You know, when I saw you that day, I went off. You see, I got chills on me now. But thinking about, that's where I usually go and process on where I was at that time. I stopped really, and I really started crying. Because I was almost there in my manhood, my testosterone. I was almost there. And for something, I bagged up. And I didn't want to look like I was weak to me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to look like I was weak to me, but common sense played out. And I was glad I bagged away.
To be able to have that common sense that you only really get when you get older. When you're 15, 20, that doesn't register yet.
Man.
And that's why I see a lot of young kids going to jail because of they can't control that at that young age.
I got to say, Mike, look, ain't nobody's chunk. And I don't want to walk around with this on my shoulder, you know, I'm big, bad, and all that. No, I'm not. I'm going to use that in reverse. People don't say, I want to show love. I want to show restraint. And that was hard for me at that point. And I was challenged big time to restraint.
Here you were probably what, your 60s at that time?
Yeah, I was 71 years old.
71 years old,
Yeah.
and you're talking to a 14, 15-year-old
Yeah,
kid.
yeah.
And that alone, because of that incident, you were still like, I got to be careful of this. I don't know what this kid has. Whereas back in the day, you never would have worried about that.
Man, I would have never thought about it. It was going to be on. You know, you're going to respect your elder. You ain't know my dad. I didn't want to go through that. I said, no, let me take a step backwards. And I'm so grateful to God I did to this day. Because sometimes, you know, you have little snapshots of what you could have done. And if I looked at that snapshot, I wouldn't be here sitting with you right now talking to you about that incident. That's why it's enjoyable for me to talk to you about it, because I have no boundaries about telling the truth. The worst thing you can tell anybody in the world is the truth. The truth hurts people. Lies can run all kinds. But when you come at somebody with the truth, they got no wiggle room. I'm going to give you what I got.
I think that'd be like the best thing you could tell them. Whether, as long as you're comfortable, maybe losing a few friends over it. But if it needs to be said, sometimes maybe it's not the best time to be said. But
I have lost so many. Let me say, I have lost but I have moved myself away from so many so-called friends. A friend take work. You have to be able to be talking to someone that, to tell you the truth, if they're going to cut you, a friend will cut you, but a associate will cut you, but a friend will use a scalpel to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
You feel what I'm saying?
I know, man.
Look, man, you know you're off the chain right now, right? I know it, but I can have that coming from you. So that's why I had to go through my Rolodex of friends without them even knowing it. And I said, listen here, this is your bus stop. You got to get off here. Where am I going? You're going to get off my bus, because I'm not taking you to bed with me at nighttime in my mind. I can't feel it. Next stop. If it's anger, resentment, hey, got to get out of here. because that negative energy draws me into them having a conversation, and I don't need it. I don't need that. I'm trying to fulfill and move forward, and you still won't hold back in the past.
It's just all your experiences, and I know we've only touched on a few brief ones, but just hearing all that just makes me understand just how much having positive adults in your life, mother, father especially, and how much it plays a part into how you grow up now and what you saw back in Mississippi and then where you've come from now, all these experiences. It's great for young people to actually hear about what our older generation went through, because it helps us figure out where we're going now, because you went through a lot of fights that we don't have to go through now.
Right.
We have different fights, and the younger people who are younger than me are going to have different fights, but to know where it all came from,
Right.
it's just knowledge that you can't put a price on.
No, you can't.
But with everything that you've learned to, or that you've been through and what you've learned, what does Black History Month mean to you?
It means something to people, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
Why not?
You can't take history of 400 years and put them in a month.
It's a good way to put it.
You look at the things that African Americans have done in this country for a month. It's the shortest month of the year. I look at what we've done through the whole year. I look at what African Americans people have done for the whole year and generations. I look at all of that. I look at all of it and a rich history from 1619 or 1498. One of the ships, the Columbus one, the Pinyon and Santa Maria. One of the captains of the Santa Maria name was Pedro Alonso Nino. He was a black captain. Well, the captain of the ship bringing slaves over. Yeah, okay.
Really, I did not know that either.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
One of the captains of he was a captain. He was the Nino brother, Pedro Alonso Nino, and he was the captain of the Santa Maria. That's what people don't know. Say, even like you heard the expression about Mardi Gras, okay, in New Orleans. Guarantee half of the people in New Orleans don't even know why Mardi Gras got started. Okay, Mardi Gras got started because what happened is Haiti was the only continent outside of Africa that was black, and so a lot of these people on the slave ship will go all the way down to New Orleans and all down to Cuba and places like that and say, we got a free country outside of Africa, and it's Haiti.
Wow.
That's how it got started. So when you start talking, it's too much to compile up into 1 month of what the extraordinary things that African Americans have done in this country. And then after Hispanic Heritage Month, Cinco de Mayo. I mean, you got the Irish. You got this. It's okay to have a month for everybody, but that month in the history, like Juneteenth,
yeah,
that in the 4th of July said, okay, with Juneteenth, they didn't even know that they were free on Juneteenth at that time. So when a lot of people say, well, I'm celebrating Black History Month. It used to be Black History Week. It was only a week when I was coming up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was called Negro History Week. It said, okay, you can have 1 week a year to celebrate Negro History Week, and that's it. But it was all good, and it was informational only that I enjoyed. So it used to be called Negro History Week. That's what.
Well, that's gonna shock a lot of people that was even a thing. That's where it came from. Because nobody talks about that when it comes to Black History Month. That, hey, by the way, did you realize it was only a week and here's what it was actually called?
From the first grade to I was in the 9th grade in 1960. It was Negro History Week. It went to the 60s. Said now we're going to extend it to a month. It didn't have it. It was Negro History Week.
I forgot who it was, but there was somebody who was influential who said almost the same exact thing about Black History Month. Is that he says we need to get rid of it, which caused a lot of controversy. Right. But when he explained himself, which was pretty much that reason, like, why give us just one month? Why give any race, creed, whatever 1 month? Why can't we celebrate it throughout the whole year?
Right.
because then it's sort of, and he's got a point. It sort of makes it where it's okay to talk about certain things this month here, but then the other months we just won't care about
Well,
it.
we'll let the Irish group come up after us on March, and we'll let the other groups come to that. Okay, that's good and dandy, but they didn't come in slave ships. They came up out of Statue of Liberty. You came up and give me your tie and your pour your heart of mass. That Statue of Liberty came from France. You came standing up. We came laying down. Your rich history of your country that you got a chance to bring to this country, whether it be the Italian, whether it be any other culture. Here, Mexico, right here, man. They was from all the way down from California to Texas. This was Mexico. So
Yeah.
Come on.
remember.
And so what happened is, how are you going to start on the East Coast with the Indian shaking his hand, 35 Indian, and having Thanksgiving, and then you got 13 original colonies. Colonies at the time was called penitentiaries. So what happened is, you migrate from there, you buy Louisiana Purchase, and then you have the Spanish-American War to move yourself all the way from Texas to California, and you're going to exclude Mexico? Are you kidding? So that's the history that I'm so grateful that I learned, not about African American history culture, but culture of this country and cultures around the world. That's what I enjoy, because it gives me freedom to have a conversation with anybody. I'm not afraid to back off on conversations, healthy conversations. I'm not afraid of anyone to talk about healthy conversations at all. And I think that's where we're missing, because people are walking on eggshells and they're intimidated what you might come up with. I know I'm 6 foot African American man. I know that, okay? But do you know my heart?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? But do you know my heart? No, I don't want to know your heart, because what I see visually can give me all the answers I need. Okay, but that's on you. But they don't see what I see. That's how I see it. That's how raw and honest I am about it, to anyone.
That's unbelievable. Zubi, or JB, you have a lot of knowledge, and I'm glad we got to talk about all these experiences, because this just reemphasizes a lot of what we had already talked about previously. And also, whenever, people get the chance to hear this or watch it, to be able to see and hear what you actually went through, why you're trying to do good in the world, and just how, sometimes it gets frustrating when you try to challenge people and you sort of get pushed back in ways that you didn't expect to. It's call it what it is on that one, but you're trying to do great things out there, and I'm really happy that we can get this message out there more often. And no matter what, just have a peace of mind knowing that this is always going to be out there for people to hear your voice, to hear your experiences, and hopefully it makes a positive influence on people's lives. So thank you again for coming out here and doing it. Now, there was one thing that we didn't get a chance to get to that I'm gonna we're going to have a conversation about, but we're going to put that on my Patreon channel here. You've been married 52 years, and everybody's always trying to find out what's the secret to a long, happy marriage. So we're going to get into that in a second. But for right now, Zuberi, thank you so much for coming on to my show. I really appreciate it. And at the very least, we got to do it again sometime soon.
No problem, Mike. Number one, I just want to thank you, man, because you didn't come and meet me. There was a divine appointment with you that day. I'm saying there was a divine appointment. You didn't know anything about worldwide, and I didn't either. But I was pointed in a direction to you for no apparent reason, and I'm grateful.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm glad to shift the conversation to find out about how you succeeded in a 52-year marriage, because I could probably learn a few things or two about that. But for right now, thank you so much for coming on. For everybody who's watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. And for everybody who's listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, we're going to take this conversation to my Patreon channel. Again, you can go to patreon.com/realtalksontheRocks or follow the links in the description there to get to the bonus content that we're about to film. So, Zubi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good day.
Thank you.